Okay, so this problem, for number one, it says, in rats, a long tail is dominant to a short tail. So I'm going to start with the definitions from this, and I'm going to determine what letter I want to use for the dominant trait, and which letter I want to use for the recessive trait. So I'm going to start with the long tail, and I'll use a capital R for a rat. And a rat is going to have a long tail if it's got a capital R in it. My recessive trait is going to be the short tail because it's not shown over the dominant, so I'll use a little r, and I'll say that this is short. Next, it says, using a Punnett square, indicate the genotype and phenotype ratios of a cross between a male rat that is homozygous for a long tail and a female that has the recessive trait. Okay, so I know homozygous means the same. So I need to go back to my definitions and figure out what letter they'll have if they have a long tail. So look over here, a long tail is going to be capital R. So I know that I have to have two capital R's to make them the same. So one, will be capital R, capital R. Then I know that the female is showing that recessive trait. So if you have the recessive trait and it shows, you're only going to be able to have those two little r's. If you had a capital in there, it would look long again. So two little r's. I'm going to make my Punnett square. And I'll put the little r's over here and the big r's on top. Now you could have put the little r's on top and the big r's on the side. It doesn't make a difference. And then I can go ahead and cross. I bring my capital down, my little guy over, capital down, little guy over, capital down, little guy over, capital down, little guy over. Now, sometimes you might find that you put your lowercase first instead of your capital. Technically that's okay, kind of like how 2 times 3 equals 6 and 3 times 2 equals 6 too. But you should try to have the capital in first because that's going to show you that dominant trait that's showing through. So you might want to just erase it, rewrite it. It means the same thing, but it'll be a little bit easier later on if you have them written in this way. So next let's go ahead and make our genotypes. I count how many boxes have 2 capital letters in them, and I see that none of these boxes have 2 capital letters. So I'll put a 0 for my first one. 1 box has 1 capital letter. I'm sorry, 4 boxes have capital letters, so I'll put a 4. And 0 boxes have no capital letters, so that would be 0. Okay. Then I write my phenotypes, and I know that this is going to show a long trait, this will show a long, this will show a long, this will show a long. So that's 100% of my boxes will show long tails.